So in 1980, a musical legend was assassinated. The star of Bedtime for Bonzo became the leader of the free world, and a volcano exploded like... Yeah, it was the beginning of a new decade, a decade of high fashion, fancy dancing, and the introduction of some pretty sweet technology. It was a period marked by a team that inspired an entire nation, and another team that, well, you decide.
The stakes were high, but not too high. We were too young to know the benefits of reaching for the sky. We dug in deep, one and all. We made a bond like brothers with each other. One amazing fall at St. Paul, where we played ball. Yeah, our coach was on our backs, with our backs against the wall. We were strong, and we moved fast. We did everything we could to end up first, but we were last. It was our world until the end, sliding face down on the shower tile, not hard to comprehend, with helmets tight and standing tall. We didn't care, we didn't have concussion protocol. At St. Paul, where we played ball, they gave awards for mediocre. By God, we'd win them all. We had fun, and we moved fast. We did everything we could to come in first, but we were last.
A football's shape is a prolate spheroid, which means its polar axis is greater than its equatorial diameter. A football is so much more than simply a ball. Likewise, a football team is not simply a group of human beings. It's a collective of individual personalities not defined by their matching uniforms. You see, sometimes things are not what they seem. Sometimes they are so much more. Take, for example, the 1980 St. Paul Laker Middle School football team. They were a collection of prepubescent boys brought together by the gridiron, practicing on a field the size of great-grandma's feather bed. And they were, indeed, so much more. This ragtag group of crackling voice youngsters at the beginning of a decade became a team for the ages. And just like a football is not a ball, their story isn't what you'd expect. They didn't win a championship, they weren't wrought with scandal. Their tale isn't something worthy of an ESPN 30 for 30, or even an after-school special, or one of those local cable access shows that plays on a loop and you catch at 2 o'clock in the morning when you wake up you've been sleeping on the remote control, and theirs is a unique tale of teamwork, lifelong friendship, lasting memories, and I guess a gratuitous shower scene.
CYO football was waning at that time. Not all schools could field full teams. Teams were consolidating to make teams. I think it was about the contraction of CYO.
Yeah, I mean, they hadn't had football at St. Paul's for a long time. So bringing it all back together was an event in itself.
Back in the old days when there used to be a high school, they used to have a football team here. And so I didn't think it was a stretch to ask Monsignor to give us a football team. And I think he was such a nice guy that he did what he could to do it.
The principal announced on the PA that all kids wanting to play football in the fall meet the new coach on the playground after school. So a bunch of us headed out to meet him, and there was probably like 7 or 8 of us, and that's obviously not enough to make a football team. And that's where the coach told us, we need more players. Go out and find them any place you can, any way you can. And that's pretty much was our directive over the summertime, to find more players to have a complete football team for the fall of 1980.
And the coach was like, you need to gather up friends, you need to call buddies, try and get whoever you want. It was a numbers game at first, I think.
He's like, we need more players if we're going to field this team. Who do you know?
I was on a team going at St. Paul, Catholic school. The Catholic League was kind of a nice guy league, polite league. And then the public school kids came in and tore it up.
I looked at Red Barons first. They were full. I was a member of St. Paul's Parish because my parents got married there.
I mean, we all loved football, just absolutely loved playing football and didn't want to stop. And the Red Barons, who we all played Pee Wee football for, they stopped, was it 6th or 7th grade? There's no, in the Grosse Pointe public school system back then, there was no middle school football. So if you wanted to keep playing football when you were in middle school, there were no options.
I know there was a few people that weren't Catholic that were allowed to join the parish.
Some people weren't Catholic that became Catholic in a day, which is interesting. Some still are, by the way.
And I think I talked to George Kayza, and he said he was playing there, and so I kind of looked into it.
Who do I know? I know Chris Pesci. He'd love to play. Jim Rao, man, that guy would love to play football again.
And somebody, a friend of mine or somebody said, right, that St. Paul's had a team and that they needed players or something.
There was no email, there was no text, there was no phone call. You found out through friends. Hey, this football team want to play? Yeah, sure, I'll play. You hopped on your bike from your house and you rode your bike to wherever the practice was going to be.
No, I played Red Barons, and then I played at Star of the Sea, Our Lady Star of the Sea, on my 7th grade. And then somebody called me to play for the over there at St. Paul's.
Unfortunately, the Catholics couldn't support a football team, and so they decided they need to recruit the Presbyterians. But all you had to do is become a member of the parish.
As long as you belonged to the parish, you could play football for us.
Andy Tolado, the coach, sent me down to the parish office to get 6 applications for membership of the parish, because we had a little issue with some of the players not being involved in, or members of the parish. And so he sent me down there so that I would talk to the parish office, because he knew I was a student there. And I picked up the applications and brought them back.
Unknown to my parents, I came home, filled out a card, turned it in. Next thing you know, they gave me a helmet and I was on the team. And a week later, my parents got several calls from their friends that were extremely happy that we had joined St. Paul's, because my dad and I have the same name. Next thing I know, my parents at dinner confronted me with this situation and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm playing football at St. Paul." And they said, "How did you become a member at St. Paul?" And then, basically you filled out a card and got to join the parish.
My mom's a CCD teacher for 30 plus years. St. Paul's, my parish.
I had played football through the Grosse Pointe Lions system from the time I was in 4th grade. And by the time 7th grade rolled around, the Grosse Pointe Lions had completely blown up, and they canceled the league. And so a bunch of us were scrambling to find a place to play. We went over and played for the Red Barons, the Grosse Pointe Red Barons, which was our crosstown rival team. And when that happened, I was able to meet a lot of guys from the other side of town and form some friendships. But it wasn't until 8th grade when I started to look again for a place to play, and I asked my mom if I could play at St. Ambrose. Well, the problem with St. Ambrose is that their practices were on Alter and Warren at that park just adjacent to Skateland. It wasn't the nicest of neighborhoods. We'd seen some muggings happen in that area. And so she was like, over my dead body, you're going to ride your bike to Skateland and practice football.
Skateland was a Detroit landmark, an inner city roller rink that offered entertainment in the form of a live DJ, rentable skates, and an occasional parking lot shooting. While Skateland's adjacent field was closer in proximity to the boys who lived in Grosse Pointe Park, imminent danger is what led the three boys to St. Paul to play the game they loved.
My two buddies from the public middle school, Rich Lockbuehler and Train McLeod, and I were thinking we'd have to sit out a year and pick football up again when we became high school freshmen the following year. Train wasn't even Catholic, and Rich and I were both parishioners at St. Ambrose. One of us got a call from, I think, Jim Rao, who said, "Hey, where are you guys playing football? Do you want to play at St. Paul? I'm playing there. A couple other guys from the Red Barons are playing there. Do you want to join us?" And that's how we got involved with the Lakers.
I had never played tackle football before, so it was kind of one of these opportunities where I was like, I always wanted to play football. We tried to play at St. Ambrose and couldn't do it. So we ended up looking elsewhere, and St. Paul came about.
Coach Andy said, "I don't care what their religion is, just let me know if they want to play football."
I went from knowing everybody on the team pretty much to knowing nobody.
I think in fact half the team was Presbyterian or Protestant. I don't even think, now that I think about it.
Everybody became a team, everybody became friends, but there was no animosity between a public school kid and a Catholic school kid.
We had a lot of talent that we recruited in, which made the team very good.
Once we got the folks, we got around it by them signing a letter of intention for joining the church.
St. Paul on the Lake has a rich history as one of the oldest Catholic parishes in Detroit. This impeccable house of worship sits proudly across the street from Lake St. Clair. Its award-winning school and beautiful grounds are iconic landmarks in this Tony suburb. Of course, all of that was completely lost on 8th grade boys.
And we did go to church on Sundays before the games, and so as long as everybody was at church and we all sat together, obviously some of us couldn't take communion, but I think everybody looked the other way in order for us to have a football team.
I do remember we had to go to church on Sundays, I think, before the game.
I was used to it. I think some of my teammates were not so used to going to Mass and going out to communion and taking a host.
And so we all put our jerseys on and we walked down to the church, which is that beautiful cathedral, like right on the water. And I remember, I'm Episcopalian. I remember whatever we got, there was a confusion. The pews, everyone stood up, and the next thing you know, I had taken communion, and I was like, I turned to a buddy of mine. I'm like, "Am I Catholic now?" And he's like, I think you're Catholic now."
That's when I felt important on the team, that I was able to tell them when to go up to communion. Okay, but other than football itself, I couldn't help them out.
So the whole team went up for communion, and I had never been up for a communion at a Catholic church before, so I followed in suit with the rest of the soldiers, and as I got up there, I really hadn't rehearsed or no one had taught me what to say, so.
I think that was probably the first time Jim ever had a host.
Yeah, it was Body of Christ, and I said thank you.
Oh, he turned around and he's like, "What do I do with this?" You're like, "What's this?"
So Nadia, what was your relationship with Andy?
He was my grandfather who adopted me and then became my dad. Coaching was like his favorite thing ever to do. He told me he had a great relationship with all the guys and he loved them like their own, it was his own kids.
I think I blocked them out of my mind, my memory, Well, I might have had some nightmares about Andy Collada.
Andy was a unique individual. Jumped out of his painting van.
And he'd pull up in his paint truck, you know what I mean? He'd get out, like, all right, guys, let's go.
And in his sweatpants, came up, introduced himself to everyone, shook everyone's hand, and then proceeded to turn around and give everybody a team speech as he put his hands down his pants. And
I remember him being the coach of Guardian Angel. That was a very good team, and I knew that this guy and his success at Guardian Angel was going to be a good coach for us at St. Paul.
So we'd never met a guy like him before, and I remember he showed up in his creeper van.
A different character, obviously the van that everyone talks about.
He had that To Catch a Predator van.
Andy Tolota, why does that name sound so familiar? Been going through some transcripts and I don't see the coach's name in any official sex registries, but I'm still looking, and there are questions lingering about that white van.
I'm not saying he was a predator, but that van had no windows and it might have been hand painted white. It just looked pretty dicey.
And I remember he had like rusted out hubcaps on it, and apparently someone told him like I was the guy to get him new hubcaps. So I don't know who told him that, but he came up and asked me to see if I could get him some new hubcaps, and I never did, honestly. But a Catholic 8th grade boy going to a Catholic school that apparently can like get some hubcaps for his van.
Andy had no front teeth. His front 4 teeth were missing, so he got dentures, or whatever they call them, fake teeth with a plate in it.
Because he'd always be talking in his teeth, all of them would like clip out and then clip back in. He'd use his tongue.
he would click his false teeth out and slurp them around in his mouth.
So true. We didn't even know that he had fake teeth at first. And he would take them out and put them on a bench, and the reason he did that is because he didn't want them falling out when he was yelling at us.
It was really something to see when you're 13 years old and this man is spitting out his teeth at you.
For us, at our age, we were like, what in the world is going on? The guy's removing his teeth. How old is this guy?
I have no idea why he had false teeth, but they were something.
Maybe he got him knocked out in a fight. I don't know. I mean, to be honest.
You could gauge how pissed he was at you by how fast the teeth, the teeth came out, or that they fell out, or he would suck them back into his mouth. It was like if they were out before he got to you, you're like, oh, I totally messed up. I'm in big trouble.
One time he was yelling at me and his teeth flew across the kitchen, and I could not take him serious after that.
I'd never seen dentures before, other than my grandpa putting them in a glass by the bedside table at night.
He had his little painting company and would show up there, obviously after work or, and still drenched in paint, and so it was fun to see that.
Andy also wore a heart monitor very frequently to keep monitoring his blood pressure. And for an otherwise kind of a young man, that was just odd that this guy has to monitor his heart during practice. I've never seen that before, but so be it.
Pretty sure we did like a scrimmage where you play like 20 downs against different teams, or he went off on the refs to that game to the point where the parents overheard that, and we had just built up our numbers big enough, and the parents were so upset that they pulled kids off the team and like tried to shut down the season right then. I mean, I don't remember, and I didn't hear what he said, but it was bad enough that like the season almost ended right there.
Coach Andy was a fidgeter. He had a lot of energy that I think he exhausted through fidgeting.
I was doing some line drill, and I had my hands out like this, and it was in the gym. Apparently you're supposed to have your knuckles down, and he just walked up and just stomped on my fucking knuckles. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah, he did that, and so I got to know him pretty well that day.
After a hot day of practice, 90 degrees at St. Paul's back lawn, which is now a jungle gym perhaps, and we jump in an ice cold hot tub, stainless steel tub, and it was a tub like a trough.
Oh, the little whirlpool in that locker room, it's like a steel, it's almost like a steel tube, really, not like a whirlpool. And it was like a toilet with aeration.
He'd filled up the hot tub with water and then dumped several bags of ice into the hot tub. He made us all line up and jump into the hot tub.
And that's how we'd cool off after that, after a 90-degree day of practice with Andy. He thought it would be so funny to throw an extra bucket of ice on us.
And then he dunked our heads under in everybody else's filth.
We used to tape our ankles without any pre-tape on them. So it was just athletic tape over the actual skin. And at the end of the game, when you rip that off, most of your leg hair would come off with it.
Yeah, it was bizarre about taping because I don't think they used stuff underneath the tape they use now.
I like the fact that I was, a safety net, but I hate taking the tape off after the game. I just didn't like using the scissors or peeling it off because it stuck to your skin.
I think it stifled actually some of the hair growth on my calves and on my around my ankles.
It's like he was, mending a fire hose or something like that. I mean, he would wrap our ankles so tight. Truthfully, I don't even know how we played.
I remember being in church before our games and my ankles just throbbing. You could feel with every heartbeat, you could feel the blood just pulsate through your ankles because the tape was so tight.
I was always an offensive lineman, and we were not worthy enough to have our ankles taped. Only the running backs and quarterbacks could get their ankles taped. I never experienced that privilege of having that additional support with the ankle tape. So Coach Andy doing it too tight, tough shit.
He was an interesting coach, I have to say that.
Coach would make us run it was like a square or the rectangle around the property. And I knew when we had bonded and become a team because we would run as a group, and as we got on the opposite side of our locker room, 2 or 3 guys would drop out and just sit in the shade, and then the team would bunch up as we ran by the coach's office or where he was, because he wouldn't count. So we were already working together to beat the system, and then 2, 3 other guys would drop out on the next lap, and we'd all get a break.
One time he decided that we should practice at Kirby Field.
He had us run from the school to Kirby Field for our practices in our uniform and helmet. I mean, that was just crazy to jog to practice.
And Kirby Field was, several miles away, and it was probably the hottest day of the summer. And he told us that we had to run there.
I don't think he thought it was that far for us, but it was brutal.
I remember it being, just a long run and just being, it was something like, are you kidding me type thing, are we going to really do this?
The old cliche is we're as fast as our slowest man or woman, so you pick up the rear and, I thought it was good. I think he just wanted to see who could do it.
It was Train's mom's turn to drive, and she was a little bit late because of work. And so we were late for practice, and we hustled into the locker room. Nobody was there, everybody was gone. So we figured that they were all at practice already at Kirby Field. And so we quickly got on our equipment, and we ran to the field, and it was the fastest 2-mile sprint I've ever taken.
We had jogged all the way there, ate up basically the entire practice time.
I finally got to practice, and by the time I got there, it seemed like it was just ending. When we got there, Coach Andy made us run sprints. So we ran to practice where we would be doing a bunch of running, which made no sense to me, but I guess it made me a harder worker.
What do they say? 100%, 100% of the time. And that was like Coach's motto a little bit, He always wants to do better.
He told us we were going to run home. And we said, there's no way we can make it home.
It was like 110 degrees, and some of us rode back in his van, creeper van. I think we had the door open though, so I felt kind of safe.
I remember painting the helmets.
Everyone got their helmet. We had to take them home, and you had to sand them because he was going to paint them. That's I think I used like 80 grit or something, so it's all scratched to hell. It's like not quite a helmet anymore. He painted them on the lawn where we practice. And you had like grass and crap off your helmet and dirt. I don't think he used primer. I don't think you're supposed to do that in the first place. I remember games, I don't remember the other guys were like playing in the game and like all the paint came off the helmet on the other team's uniform.
I remember that. And then did he try to tape, he tried to tape the Wolverine wings onto him too, didn't he? Okay, yeah. I mean, it's like, we spent more time on our helmets than we did on our offensive scheme, definitely.
He was a character. He drove the bus.
I don't think they would have let Andy drive the bus, but I don't know, maybe.
I don't even know if he had a license. I don't know if he should have been driving the team bus.
But he drove a bus full of 14, 15 people to each away game.
No, I did not feel secure.
Yeah, I mean, well, he drove the bus, but I mean, he drove it at a rapid pace. Traffic signs were a suggestion, but we got there,
And he would just grind the gears on that thing.
Maybe the fumes from the painting or, whatever, but it just seemed like, the bus was always, and just the way he drove, it just seemed like we were just weaving in and out. And
I don't think we got in an accident at any time, but we probably came pretty close.
We were under the protection of him.
We were praying in the bus that he wasn't going to crash it. We're like, oh my God, we're going to die.
Good thing we went to church before we got on that bus, right?
I'm glad we made it through, without anybody getting hurt with the bus.
I remember Talata had a rule, you couldn't even look at the cheerleaders or talk to them on the way out of the locker room into the bus. Because the cheerleaders would line up and, do their thing. And he would look at us with this serious look, and if we even looked at him, he would be, whatever, he'd blow a lid as he always did.
We had a pretty unique environment in our locker room. The locker room at St. Paul was downstairs, so I can remember times that we played out in the mud, pouring rain, completely muddy, and we just walked straight down to the locker room and right into the showers in our uniforms.
One time we were all down in the locker room after a game, and we had just won, and we were all celebrating. We were very happy. And there was a knock on the door of the locker room, and all these 8th grade boys were running around, big open shower. We were all naked. And Coach Andy yelled out, "Who is it?" And you heard a voice on the other side of the door say, "Monsignor." And he started to freak out, and he just started going crazy. "Get dressed, get a towel on, get dressed, everybody get dressed." And he's holding onto the doorknob, not letting it open, and finally he opens it up, and it was my dad outside playing a prank on us, telling us the Monsignor was stopping by, and Andy got a big kick out of that.
We were blowing this team out. I don't know what it was. We're beating them pretty bad, so I got in, and their guard pulled, and there was nobody in front of me. I didn't touch anybody, and I tackled him before he was able to pitch the ball. We came back after the game to the locker room, whatever. The coach, out of nowhere, he never said a word to me, but the one time he did, he said, "Oh, I think the player of the game that really surprised me the most, Rob Colby." I almost fell off the bench. I was very surprised that he called me out. That was the one time I think in my career that a coach singled me out. Besides, hey, go get water for the starters.
Yeah, he cared about us and he cared about our presentation. Andy did everything.
He was a good coach. Yeah, he put his time and effort in, and that's a lot to ask for anybody to do that.
I thought he was a total disciplinarian. He was like this tough and rumble kind of guy, you know what I mean?
I drank like 8 pots of coffee, smoked a bunch. He could have been 30.
I would say Andy would have been probably in his early 40s, early to mid 40s.
Who knows? He looked like he was about 45, 50.
He wanted to lay the law a little bit, but he gave us a lot of slack. That gave us an opportunity to be ourselves, and then that enabled me or you or whomever to play a lot better football. He let you loose.
He looked like a tough guy, maybe a little bulldogish, maybe came across like he was going to be tough on us. I don't remember him being tough on us. I thought he was a pretty nice guy.
He was a very strict coach.
I can remember running down the boulevard, and we would come back and we would go back into the field, And we thought we were all done. He's like, you're not done. You're gonna do up downs. You're gonna do jumping jacks. You're not done.
He was a good man. He was a really good leader.
So he really was a motivator, by fear, if you will, to just make us be the best player we could be. And there's something to be said about that.
He was a nice guy when it came down to it, but he would get his point across when he needed to, too.
He always wanted to do something and make good memories on our end, and just, he wanted everyone to be happy.
I don't think he had any ties in terms of kids on the team, but yet he must have had love of the game, and good guy, good coach, obviously liked coaching football.
Teaching everybody to live life to the fullest, because you never know when your last day will be. That's what he taught all of us, that's for sure.
For 8th graders who needed that kick in the pants, he might have been the perfect coach for that team.
Andy Tellado was a coach with a lot of passion, unrelenting energy, and on top of that, he was a good football coach.